All right, so we are in our second week in our series called Friending. Last week we talked a little bit about the importance of friendship and how God's actually designed us for relationships with each other. Yes.
Snacks.
No, I completely forgot about it. No, we're going to do that for groups. We'll send you out with gifts.
No.
No snacks right now. Really lost where I was.
Sorry, my bad.
That's okay.
No,
I hate Noah now, so just
Oh, snap.
Anyway, so we're talking about friending. Today, I want to talk about our second question. We talked about, is friendship important last week? We said yes. Because friendships are there to build us up, to support us, and God actually wants us to be together. Now, the second question we're doing in our series is, how do I find friends? Which, for some of you might be like, that is an awesome question. I would love to know that answer. For some of you, like, I have plenty of friends, I don't need any more. Like, this is kind of a waste. For both groups, whether it's easy for you or hard for you, I kind of want to talk about it because some of that concept, even just finding a friend, is actually flawed a little bit and actually can set you up for bad relationships and bad friendships if we don't think through it properly. Now, there's a couple of questions that I want to run through and think about. If you were to try to find a friend, maybe a boyfriend or a girlfriend, what would be a phrase that you would use to try to introduce yourself to that person? Anybody have any ideas of maybe a concept or what you would use? Yes?
Come here often.
Come here often. All right, so you might just say that. I found some awesome ones online that I plan on using on my wife sometime just to see how it works. So, guys, can you roll me through these?
Yep.
And we'll just see. Let's see here. This is a great one, ladies. If you'd like to use this on a guy, it'd be great. Are you a magician? Because whenever I look at you, everyone else disappears. So, ladies, if you say that to a guy, I'm telling you, they will be. Well, they'll just be happy the fact that you're actually talking to them. They won't hear a word that you're saying. So you could probably say this, and it would be a great relationship. Here's another one. Are you religious? Because you're the answer to all my prayers.
Aww.
That's terrible. All right, let's go to the next one. I seem to have lost my phone number. Can I have yours?
I'm going to use that in
You're going to use that one? Use that one of your teachers. See what happens. All right, here we go. Can I be your friend? I'm a good guy. I really try hard. I love the game.
Yes!
So, that's a great line to use on people. I'm just entertaining notes.
That's my favorite one.
This is his favorite line of all time. Let's see here. Do you believe in love at first sight, or should I pass by again? So if you want to really get into a relationship, like this is a good one. All right, here's the next one. If nothing lasts forever, will you be my nothing?
Wow. That's crazy.
That's a pretty good one. Anybody gonna use that?
No.
Thank you, Logan. Just flat out no. All right, is this the last one? Yes. Is your dad a terrorist? 'Cause very dumb. I feel like this is the greatest relationship starting question ever.
Is your dad card?
Don't say this in an airport, all right? I'm just gonna
Never say that.
Maybe not in school either, but this might be a good one. So as we're thinking about finding friends, maybe don't use any of these when trying to find a friend. But the question I want to think about is, how do I find friends? How do I find friends? I want to take a look first at Jesus and some of the relationships he had, and look at the circle of friends that he had. And as I go through this, I want you to think about your friendships and your relationships that you have. And just kind of don't say it out loud, because you might have a person that as we're going through this list, you're like, oh, they fit in there, and the person might hear and be like, wait, I'm in that category? Like I thought I was in a different one. So just think of it in your own head. But these are kind of the spirit or circles of relationships that we see Jesus having. So here's the first one. Jesus had acquaintances. Now, oftentimes we talk about acquaintances as friends, and I don't have a problem with that. But there were people in Jesus' life that just kind of followed him around. They were there with him when he was giving them food. They loved Jesus. But then when it came to actually being with Jesus, if it cost them something, they were like, I'm out. Now, for some of you, you think you have lots of friends, but the reality is you might actually just have lots of acquaintances. And acquaintances is just a person who, like, they're there with you in the good times. And then if it gets a little rough, they're just like, you know what, I'm backing off. I don't really want to be there. And Jesus had those people who had followed him for a bit, and then when it started getting a little difficult, or when Jesus didn't give them everything that they wanted, they were like, well, see you later. All right, so think about maybe the people in your life that you would say, all right, they're probably in that category. Here's the next one. Jesus had friends. I know that sounds weird, right? But Jesus had friends. Now, the Bible actually talks about it. He had somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 at one point that went out and did some work for him, followed him around. At other points, there was up to like 120. This is like a group that's like, hey, you know, when the going gets rough, or when, you know, you may even need something from me, I'm still there. I still care. All right? So that's the slight difference there between acquaintances. Acquaintances will bail when it gets tough. Like, or not even tough, just when you're not giving anything to them that they want, acquaintances will bail. Friends will still stay. But then what we see with Jesus is he actually, we have the crowds here of like 4,000 and 5,000. We have anywhere from like 70 to 120 people. And then at this next level, we have his closest friends. These are the disciples. Do you know how many disciples he had, or apostles, or immediate followers of Jesus? Anybody know the number?
47.
No.
12.
12. All right? So you see what's happening here as people get closer to Jesus, the closer they get to Jesus as far as their relationships with him and their friendships with him, the smaller the number gets. Now, why do you think that's the case? How many of you guys can deeply know 130 people and know everything about them? Or be really, really close to them and know a lot about them? How many of you just saying that, you're just like, oh man, like, don't even get me around that many people, let alone like having to deal with all their stuff. But Jesus had a group of closest friends. These guys followed him around and basically lived with him for 3 years. Think of this as kind of your friend group that is so close to you, like they're over at your house all the time. They're there with you. They're spending a lot of time with you. Sometimes you don't do everything with them, but for the most part, like if you got to go out or you're going to go do something, you're going to go hang out, like this is the group. And it's not that big. 12 people in reality is not that big, but Jesus had these relationships to where as he got closer to people, the numbers actually shrunk down. So beyond that, he had the 12, and then he had the inner circle of friends. So out of these 12, there was actually 3 of them, Peter, James, and John. So where if Jesus was going to do maybe something that he couldn't take everybody with, he'd take Peter, James, and John. Now this wasn't favoritism, but this was Peter saw something, or Jesus saw something in them. There was a relationship there that was slightly different than the others. It's not that the others, you know, he was like, these guys are bums, you know, so they're just going to like not hang out. But you know what I mean. These are kind of like your go-to friends. These are the ones to where, like, when Jesus was just about to die, he asked Peter, he asked John to come with him and said, just hang out with me. I'm going to go pray. Can you pray with me? Can you stay up and pray with me? Now, he had all 12 with him, but then when he went off to the private place, he brought 2 of the 3 with him. When Jesus actually had some alone time with God to where God was actually going to reveal himself, he brought Peter, James, and John up to the top of the mountain to do this. Jesus had a very tight-knit, close circle. But then we're going to find something even more interesting. He had a best friend. If you read through the book of John, who's probably a young teenager, 14, 15, 16, maybe 19 at the max. John loved Jesus. John always describes himself as the disciple whom Jesus loved. And when Jesus is on the cross and everyone has abandoned him, guess who's still there at the foot of the cross? His mother and John. And when Jesus in that day, and it's true even for today, but we don't necessarily think of it this way. And I want you guys, as you get older, think about this. God's actually called us to care for our parents when they need care. I know some of you are like, I just want to get away from my parents. You mean I'm going to get away and then I'm going to have to come back? And like, yes, you will change their diapers one day. I'm just telling you. And it will be nasty. Just kidding. Well, maybe not.
May
I don't
change
know.
yours, Ian?
Yeah, all the adults are like, no, that's true. They changed yours, you'll eventually change theirs. I'm just saying that. But here's the thing. It was Jesus' responsibility because his father had died. So Jesus was the oldest son. It was his responsibility to take care of his mother. And in that day, they didn't have like nursing homes, they didn't have welfare systems, they didn't have, like if you were a widow in Jesus' day, you were done. Like very rarely could you survive it if your family didn't step up. And Jesus, when seeing John and his mother at the foot of the cross, he says to John, John, this is now your mother. Mother, who is Mary, says, this is now your son. The relationship that he was supposed to protect the most here on earth and care for the most here on earth that God had given him, he turns it over to John. He didn't turn him over to Peter. He didn't turn it over to James. He didn't turn it over to his brother James. He turned it over to John. I want you to think through these sections. Most of the time, like Facebook is acquaintances. You have 1,000 friends on Facebook or Snapchat, Instagram. Those people are there. They might send you a note here or there. They see you're down. They might send you a text. But they're kind of not there for you when you really need it, or if you really need to share something deep. Those people aren't necessarily there. Your friends, here's the reality. We might all be friends in this room, but we're not all super close friends. But we're not all best friends because we could never be all best friends because there's just too many of us. Closest friends, inner circle friends, best friends. Where do your friends fit? And can I ask you, do you have maybe one that either you are their best friend or they are your best friend to where you're willing to even do the hard things for them and go out of your way? So this is the pattern we see in Jesus' life, and I think it's actually a good pattern for us to think through. And not to just go through and like label your friends like, oh, you're just an acquaintance, so I don't have time for you. But to actually start to look through this and say, all right, if this is how Jesus set up his life, how have I set up my life? Am I just scattering myself with a whole bunch of people, or do I have some people that I can start to narrow down with and actually start to get to know and to really love and care for them as they love and care for me? And so we see these circles of friendship. We see these pattern of friendships. I love this quote from John Piper. He says, Jesus himself had a cluster of personal relationships in varying depths. But Jesus had some deep personal relationships while he was still able to be open and outgoing. So Jesus had the depth and the breadth in his relationships. And so what does Jesus say about his friendships that will help us maybe to be able to find friends? If you have your Bibles, turn to John chapter 15. And we're going to try to race through this pretty quickly so we can get you guys off the groups. So John chapter 15, verses 12 through 15. If you don't have a Bible, we'll go ahead and get some. Go ahead and stand up if you don't have one. Go ahead and grab one. Page 752. That's what I forgot.
What?
The Bibles.
So. None of you are having fun, but no, we're not having fun. None of you are, yeah. I feel like you bumped the game one. I was the only one who said that.
So, John 15, 12 through 15, page 752. Here we go, let's look at it. If you want to, you can kind of catch up. Here we go, verse 12. It says, my command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friend. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. Jesus here is talking about friendships. He's talking about relationships. He's talking with that close group of friends. his closest friends, and he's saying, listen, this is not just a teacher-student relationship. You are my friends. And he desperately cares for them. And the Bible will go on to say that anyone who has a relationship with Jesus, that you're not just in the acquaintance circle, that you are actually his friends, part of his sphere, to where he desperately cares for you, that he loves you. When we think about this, most of the time when we're looking for relationships, we need to understand that we can find friendship with Jesus. We can find friendship with Jesus. Jesus loved us. He extended his love by laying down his life for us. And if we trust him that he did that for us, we receive that friendship, we receive that love, we receive that grace into our lives. And it's actually freeing because, think about this, do you have to earn any bit of this friendship? Think about the friendships that you have. How much do you have to earn those friendships? How much do you have to actually be a good friend first before you get into a good relationship with that person? Very rarely do I see someone, unless they're famous, but the reality is, even then, it's not that often. Very rarely do you see someone just kind of walk up to somebody and be like, hey, you're a jerk. And the other person's like, I want to be your friend. It just doesn't happen. Why? Because you kind of have to earn the relationship. See, here's the thing. With Jesus, you don't have to earn the friendship. With Jesus, it's trusting him. And then he says, if you are my friends, listen to what I would say. That verse cracks me up every time because you know how some people would, I don't know, this is like an old church thing. Maybe some of you wouldn't get it, but like people would write a letter or write a card, and at the bottom, after they sign their name, some people would write a verse down, and they just write the reference to the verse. So like John 10:5 or something like that. And normally it's like a reference that's like, be still and know that I am God, or some like poetic type thing. One of my friends always signed his name, and then he signed John 15:14 underneath it, and just left it like that. Didn't write it out. And people would go and look at it and be like, if you are my friends, you do what I command. He just thought that was hysterical. I think it's kind of funny too. But here, we can find friendship with Jesus. Now, this is the point that I want to bring out with this. We don't have to earn it. Have you ever had a friendship to where you actually didn't have to earn it? The person was just gracious towards you and loved you and cared about you. I've had a couple to where it's like, wait, I don't even understand why you're even interested in me, and yet you still are and you actually care. There's something about that relationship that just starts to free you. Now think about it this way. The God of the universe says, you don't have to earn it with me. When we wake up in the morning and we're wondering who's going to care for us, who actually loves us, I'm running into a situation when I go to school and it's going to be bad. And I got to meet that person and I just know everyone's going to hate me. But if you're a follower of Jesus, you can get up that morning and know, even though it's probably not everyone in school is going to hate you, but let's just say everyone in school did hate you. The God of the universe says, guess what? You don't have to earn it. I already know how bad you can be and how bad you are, and I still don't reject you. So I've given you friendship. Please listen to what I say. Do you know how freeing that is? But here's the problem. Most of the time we get this all mixed up because we want to find friendships with Jesus, but here's the next point. Instead of just finding friendship with Jesus, we need to make friendships with others. Here's the problem. Most of the time we reverse that. Most of the time we feel like we need to make friendship with Jesus. I got to earn this. I got to do some good things so God will like me. And whether we kind of know that that's not true or not, we kind of live that way. I screwed up here. God's not going to be happy. You know. So I feel like I have to make friends with Jesus. I have to make friends with God. And then when I come into relationships with people, I'm just kind of like, I don't understand why people don't like me. I don't understand why my friends don't care about me. I don't understand. put the weight of our friendships with people into the category of just saying, hey, you know what? I just want you to be friends with me. I don't care if I treat you like dirt. I don't care if I'm selfish. You just need to be friends with me. And if you're friends with me, then I can feel fulfilled and whole and satisfied and free. And with God, I'm just going to earn my way to it. And God says it's actually the reverse. You'll actually kill friendships if you just seek to find friends. I've said this in here before, but church is actually a terrible place to find friends. It's a great place to make friends. If you come and you're just kind of like, oh man, like I hope I can find some friends, odds are you might not find a friend. But if you come listening to even what Jesus has to say about his friendship towards us, see, what this does is since we are free and we know that we have a friend that never turns his back on us, now we can start to make friendships with others. We can actually start to love other people the way that Jesus loved us. Jesus says, no greater love than this, than one who lays down his life for a friend. See, true friends make sacrifices for others. They don't just try to find it and hope that they can get it from someone. True friends actually come and they say, I'm going to make a sacrifice for you. My question for us here tonight is, are you seeking to be a true friend? Or are you just seeking to find true friends who can be true friends to you? Are you a giver or are you a taker? Because here's the thing with God. God's like, I have a dump truck full of friendship to dump on you. Just take it. But now listen to what I have to say. Love one another. And that's one of the points that I want to draw out. He says, love one another. That friendship with that person, it's not about what you can get from them, because you've already gotten from them. I want you to give to them. And here's the cool thing. When you start giving, when you start loving, when you actually start listening to who God is and what he says, it opens the door for true friendships. Because then people are seeing, wow, this person legitimately cares for me, not because of what they can get from me, but because they just care for me. And so, like Jesus says, hey, listen to me. We can learn from that and say, all right, I need to actually take some time and show love by listening to others and caring for them. And so we need to get to know people. We need to listen to them. We need to love them. Some people that you want to become friends with, and you maybe want to even become deep friends with, I'm just going to be honest. Some people probably shouldn't sit in that circle. Your deepest friends should be the ones who have the most common bond with you. And sometimes we want our deepest friends to be the ones that can just give us their most, instead of the ones that we can give the most to with boundaries, and be the ones that we can actually center our relationships around the love of Jesus together. This doesn't guarantee friendship, but it does guarantee obedience. And when you obey God, peace starts to come, and it actually makes you more friendly. I don't know how to say it. Sometimes we are not good friends because we are not friendly. But you start to obey God by saying, all right, I'm going to find a way to love someone. It actually makes you more friendly. And so don't just try to find a friend based on character, based on status. Don't just try to find a friend and be like, oh, that's the most popular person. I want to become friends with them, so I'm just going to love them. Maybe find the person who needs a friend. And with gracious and loving boundaries, love them. Maybe you try to seek out the right person. We're going to talk about that some next week. Encourage them. Care for them. We're going to split you guys off into groups, but here's kind of the main point that I want you guys to leave with. Find friendship with Jesus, or find friendship with Jesus, make friendships with others. there's something I want to leave you with. We're going to put this out on Instagram. So find friendship with Jesus, make friendships with others. If you just get this idea that I'm not to take from other people, I'm to give. Because I can take what I need from God. At that point, you will actually become a great friend. All right? We're going to talk about this more in groups, how to listen, how to love, some different ways like that. But I'm going to let you guys head off and take some time to do that. Thanks for listening, guys. Go ahead. Keep clapping.